Because I put my thing here, so I'll just sit
Ladies
here.
and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mr. Robert Edwin Less. Officiating is Rabbi Michael Siegel, Hazan Alberto Mizrahi, Rabbi Amichai Lavi, and cantorial soloist Lori Akers. Remind everybody to please be sure your phones are off.
Dishane tova shemen roshi kosir voyo ach tovo chesed irdefuni kol yimei chayoy veshaveti Beveit Adonai leyorech yami.
Please join me as we read the 23rd Psalm responsively.
Let's read it together. It's in the front cover page of your booklets. I want for nothing, for Adonai is my shepherd. It is God who lets me lie down in pastures of grass, who leads me to calm waters, to restore my spirit, who walks me in level pastures as befits a shepherd of sound reputation. Even though I must sometimes pass through dark valleys, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Indeed, your crook and your walking stick are sources of constant comfort for me. You set a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with so much fine oil that I feel like an overflowing cup. Nothing but goodness and mercy pursue me all the days of my life. Indeed, I feel certain that I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for days without end. We gather this day to fulfill the vision of King David. We are walking through that dark valley today. Our good friend, beloved husband, brother, father, grandfather, and friend to so many, Bob Less. Looking at the video that we watched as we prepared for the service, that smile could light up a room. And as I saw that smile, I could hear that unique laugh of Bob's that lets you know that Bob was in the house. But who amongst us and who watching online does not think of his many acts of kindness, his many acts of caring? I look at his family. I think of Madeline. And if there is comfort on this day, there is the comfort in knowing that two people who are destined to be together in life will now be joined together for all of eternity. We look to Bob's beloved children. And the word beloved doesn't really begin to capture his feeling for his family. So to you, Jody, to you, Naomi, and Glenn, to you, Ron, to you, Elise, we extend our deepest sympathies and prayers for your comfort. And to the grandchildren, to Brandon, to Justin, to Ethan, and to Marlo, pray that you will emulate the best qualities of your grandfather, and that Marlo will learn about him as she grows older, and that wherever she is, she will make him proud by rooting for the Chicago Cubs. Think of Barbara, a beloved sister, a loving sister. And we think of Ted on this day too, and pray that he rests in peace. I'm going to ask the children to rise, and Barbara, if you'll rise with them, for a moment of kriya, of tearing, of acknowledging that no matter Bob's health at the end, he was torn from us. A person that vital, a person with that joie de vivre, leaves this world wanting for his light. So we acknowledge that which has been torn away, but as our tradition demands of us and as Bob would demand of us, we never allow ourselves to forget the blessing that his life represented, the blessing that it represents in this moment, and the blessing that it will continue to represent in memory. So even at a moment of tearing, we say words of bracha. So I'm going to ask the children to please repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Dayan ha'emet. Please tear your ribbon. From the bottom. From the bottom. Tear your ribbon from the bottom. In the book of Job, we are told the story of a man who suffered in life. And there were people who came to Job and said, Job, life is darkness without light. Turn your back on life. And Job said words that I could hear Bob saying as well. Because this was the attitude that he assumed, the many challenges that he faced during the course of his life. And I'm going to ask everyone to repeat these words after me, please. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem, Adonai Mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Praise be the name of the Lord. Friends, you may be seated. There is no one, either here in this room or watching us, who has not in some way been touched by Bob Less's kindness. Not a person in this room who doesn't have a memory of his caring. When Bob Less asked you, "How are you?" you knew that he wanted to know the answer, that he cared deeply. I know these things personally. I was proud to know Bob Less, proud to call him a friend. So I want to share with you at the beginning of the service my own Bob Less story. The year was 1983. It was my first year as a rabbi, assistant rabbi at Anshe. And in those years, I was in charge of a number of things in the congregation, including the religious school. So the budget meeting came around, and I was invited to come. And I sat down totally unprepared for the meeting, because no one had actually talked to me about it. So they put a spreadsheet in front of me, which could just as easily have been written in Ugaritic, because my rabbinical school education didn't include spreadsheets. And I looked at the spreadsheet and suddenly realized that I am in deep water here. So I said to the president of the shul at the time, "Can you move me to a later part of the agenda?" And he looked at me and he said, "Rabbi, you are the agenda for tonight." And suddenly I thought of the story of Korach and how the ground opened up beneath him, and thought, that's not such a bad alternative, actually. And a gentleman stood up, tall, with a huge smile on his face. And he sat down next to me. He put his arm around me. He said, "Let's have a look at this." And smiled and took me through the meeting. That was my Bob Less moment. Encapsulates the man. Caring, loving, and always present. Hineni, I am here. If Bob Less had a watchword, that would be it. You know, we are taught the word hineni in religious school. It's how you say, I'm here. But it doesn't begin to capture the meaning of the word in our tradition. It is the response to being called upon. Abraham, Moses, the great ones of Israel always responded and said, I am here, I am ready, and this was, Bob Less, if there was a picture next to Hineni, Bob's picture could easily go there. He was a man of significant integrity. He was always at the ready. He served our synagogue for years, sometimes as treasurer, sometimes running the audit. He sat on our board, always with that smile, always proud to be part of the Anshe Emet community. But the people that he was most present for were his children, his grandchildren, and most of all, Madeline. Nothing that he would not do for them. It's not to suggest that Bob Less was a perfect man. He was not. None of us are. But he is a man who made his best effort to be the best father, the best husband, the best grandfather that he could possibly be. And he worked at it, and he evolved, and he grew because he wanted to be the best that he could be. Hineni. Bob was present for his family in extraordinary ways. He loved Madeline. Boy, did he love her. He was present for her in all ways, especially in those years of illness. Those challenging years. There for his children, there for his grandchildren, in all the right ways, and sometimes remarkably uncomfortable ways. Such as when he would rise at graduations, put his arms in the air, and shout his greeting and his pleasure in the moment. Such as when he served as chaperone for his children's band tours. But he was present. And as Jody told me, I could always pick my father out of a crowd. And that reassured me. Hineni, I am here. So who better to speak about Bob Less today than his beloved family? And we're going to have the opportunity to not only hear from his biological children, but we're also going to have and from a beloved sister, but also from children that he gained in life through marriage. Ben Aronin of blessed memory had a wonderful term. He wouldn't say a son-in-law, he would say a son-in-love, a daughter. And I want to suggest that that is Elise and Glenn. So it's our privilege to hear from a whole series of people. And Barbara, will begin with you.
On behalf of Mom, Bobby, that's who you are to me always, Bobby. It's hard to say goodbye. You are a wonderful brother. My memories growing up of our relationship was one of happiness and warmth. You were so gentle and kind. Ted was away in the Air Force during 4 years of my life, from 10 to 14, so you had to be on your own to help me grow up. I know you are okay, because Marv told me last night. I'm happy You are at peace with Madeline and Ted, our mom and dad, and our family. Love you forever, my darling brother, Babe.
Thank you for your beautiful words. Jody will call on you to speak next, please.
Hard to breathe with my mask. Thanks. I really wanted to speak today because I love my dad so much. I've been so distraught that I haven't been able to put together a speech as coherently as I would have liked to, so here are my thoughts. Okay, I can only share how awesome my dad was through my eyes. My dad was everything to me. He was the tall, handsome man who would light up the room with his voice and his smile. In a crowded room, if I looked up, I could always find him. I loved that. He was full of life. He was always happy to see me. I loved to hug him. His long arms wrapped around me and held me tight, making me feel so loved and so secure. I always felt safe with him. I will miss his smile, his beautiful soft skin. He never had a beard, and his welcoming face and eyes. He was a man like no other. He was the best father, even though nobody's perfect. I will love and miss him. My dad was a true Chicagoan, born and raised. He loved living here. He was a true Cubs, Bears, and Bulls fan. He loved his friends, the Shanes, the Canellas, and the Goldenbergs, who are here today, among many others. He loved that I had a core group of friends in Chicago and that I moved to California. I also loved, what I loved about him, is his confidence. He tells it like it is. What I love is that he tells the truth. He is truth, honesty, and integrity. He says what he feels. He's honest, telling you the truth, and you know that he means it, even if you don't really want to hear it. He was confident, never wishy-washy, always knew what to do, and followed through. He's a man of character. He knew who he was. He was loyal. He believed in me. He always told me how smart and how pretty I was and that I could have a great life. He always told me how much he loved me. I will never regret that, especially in our last year of phone calls and visits, we always said I loved you. He cared about me and worried about me. I used to think that I could never survive in a world without my dad. I've been preparing myself for this day, and I know that I am stronger now. It's not where I wanted to end. Well, I mean, I'm counting on my strength, my friends, and my family to help me through this time, attempting to find. My dad always wanted me to find good meaning in my life. I guess I was going to share a story. I used to love when he worked downtown in Chicago. I remember my choir coming down to sing in Michigan Avenue. And he would come out to watch us sing. I think we sang Corner of the Sky. And I remember him telling us that When he went to work, when he went to his restaurant, he used to have favorite restaurants. Bill Curtis complimented on him on his tie, the newsman. He was just a very special man. And we always ended our calls saying, "I love you so much." And I love him so much. I always will. And I don't even remember. That's it. I just want to say that I love you so much, Dad. Thank you.
Naomi, thank you for those beautiful words. Came directly from the heart. There's nothing harder than standing up on a day like today, and you did it with such grace and dignity and strength. Thank you. Elise?
Mr. Les. Grandpa Mr. Les. Grandpa Bobby. I never called my father-in-law Dad until very recently, and I certainly never called him Bob. When Ron brought me home more than 26 years ago to meet his parents, Mr. Les introduced himself to me as, well, Mr. Les. When we got married, my father-in-law wanted me to go from calling him Mr. Les to Dad, and I just couldn't do it. It wasn't until we had kids and they called him Grandpa Bobby that I finally found a comfortable way of addressing him instead of pointing at him or tapping him on the shoulder to get his attention. He was a wonderful, loving grandfather, and our 3 boys adored him. He was so proud of the 3 of you, and I love the relationship you have had with him since you were little. But I have to say that my relationship with him took many years to cultivate. These past several years, I watched my father-in-law mellow. I saw him become incredibly appreciative and thankful. He was willing to try new things. I even got him to try acupuncture for his neuropathy. You were with me that day when we got him up the steps. Yet we were so nervous moving this lifelong Chicagoan to St. Paul, leaving his sister and his friends and his awesome caregiver, Mike. Thank you, Aunt Barbara and Mike and Naomi, for helping with that transition, because we could not have done that without you. And then there was our anxiety about how is he going to make new friends and how would we get him to participate in activities? But that first Shabbat, as he wheeled himself down the hall at the Shalom home from Shabbat services to dinner, which, let me tell you, was a feat in itself, calling Good Shabbos to everyone he came across, like this. We knew it was going to be okay. I spent a lot of time with my father-in-law this past year and a half. He was joyful and grateful, and he loved the people who took care of him. He found joy in daily yoga class, discussion groups, music. He loved it all. He wanted to try everything. In fact, one afternoon when Ron came to visit, he found his dad sitting in a quilting lecture, sound asleep. Why are you in a quilting lecture? You know you don't have to go to everything. And my father-in-law said, well, it was on the schedule, so I went. My father-in-law was even willing to try the new iPhone we bought him after we finally convinced him to get rid of the flip phone he carried in his shirt pocket but could never answer in time to get the call. We programmed everyone's name in it and practiced the voice commands over and over and over. His first solo call in this new way was to his sister Barb, who he always called Babe, as you recently heard. And when she picked up the phone, he gleefully exclaimed, "Hey, Babe, I'm calling you on the Hey series. Can you believe it?" That was one of my favorites. You know, hey Siri, call Babe. That's what I had taught him to do. So I loved coming to visit him. His eyes would light up when he saw me, and he would smile and chuckle with delight. He would hold my hand and give it a kiss when we talked about what the boys were up to in their lives away from Minnesota. I often sat with him at a meal with his new friends, and they loved to joke with him and kid him, and it was like a college dorm sitting with the cool kids in the cafeteria. Ron and I would make sure that we captured his daily activities with pictures and phone calls and video to share with Ron's sisters and aunt. One day when I was describing an afternoon I had with him to Naomi, and I said, "I am so in love with your dad. Let me tell you what he did today. You're not going to believe it." And she stopped me cold and said, "Wait, what did you just say? Did you really just say that?" And I realized I had really grown to love him. And Dad, it's true. I love you. Thank you for Ron, for your love for our children, and the joy you brought to our lives. I will miss you so much. Thanks.
Thank you for your beautiful words. Ron?
Yeah, good luck.
Just so you all know, you're now masked longer than I do an average C-section time-wise, and it's hard to keep this on for a long time, so just breathe. If your glasses fog up, hold them down a little bit over your nose, like Granny Glass style. It doesn't fog as much if you hold them down. Dad, you loved order. Pesach should have been your favorite holiday thanks to the Seder that it brings. You needed things in their place. Wait a minute. Speaking of that, I need my glasses on. I'm going to drop this a little bit. He would actually line up his watermelon seeds in straight formation. He was Mr. Napkin, to the point that his buddies that Elise talked about a few minutes ago would set a stack of napkins next to his place when they saw him coming down because they knew he needed it to be ready. His packing of a suitcase or a car trunk was legendary. Everything was eaten with a fork and knife. I actually saw him eat potato chips that way. He gravitated towards a career that forces strict deadlines on filing tax returns. He once told me the thing he loved most about accounting was a clean balance sheet. I think he would have loved spreadsheets, especially on computers, but at least he passed that trait on to Naomi, so it's going forward. Did all this organization come from his time in the Navy, or was that choice just a reflection of his inner self? In psychology, maintaining an order can be a mechanism for some to help deal with inner stressors. Dad, like most of us, had plenty of these. I believe his life exemplified a person who learned to grow from life's challenges. Despite growing up without financial means, he managed to get a college degree and form a successful accounting practice. But twice, he was forced by external circumstances to regroup until he finally created his own firm. And all that time, he managed to provide for our family and enable his 3 children to graduate from college and follow our dreams. He was usually swamped at work, as we all know, but family came first. He would always take my call, despite interrupting his busy afternoons, and then he would listen to me painstakingly regale him with the details of the day's Cubs game. As a busy professional myself, I know how calls from those that we love can interfere with your day. Thank you, Dad, for tolerating these intrusions that actually bonded us closer together. And Brandon, Justin, and Ethan, I promise, barring being in the midst of a delivery or a surgery, I promise to honor Dad by always answering your calls. He also did not come from a deeply religious background. But when he found a Jewish community in Highland Park at Bethel, he grabbed a hold of it with much zeal. He attended Shabbat services regularly, began keeping kosher, found lifelong friends with a study group, and encouraged his children to grow Jewishly through summer camp and beyond. None of this was easy for him. He became involved with Machaneh Ramah, which became such an important part of his life. One of my friends just told me 2 days ago that he loved seeing my dad show up in Conover with his big Bermuda shorts on and even bigger smile about being there. In fact, during my last conversation with him, a few days before he passed, he expressed his extreme sorrow that there would be no Ramah this summer. This from a man with no background in Jewish camping. He then had to deal with his and Mom's declining health. For years, he took time off from work to take her to many doctor appointments. He did get to sort many, many pills for the two of them, which I'm sure at least helped feed his desire for order. Watching him at the table with the daily pills was just a thing of beauty. He just kept going. He made sure that they were able to make the trek up to the Bima to chant an aliyah for each one of your bar mitzvah. I think for Ethan's, they started their walkers sometime during the Shachrit Amidah. It's this long stretch. How painful to watch the love of your life slowly fade away. Unbelievable stress. And with determination, speaking of stress, after so many seasons of disappointment, despite the struggle to walk from the curb on Clark and Addison into Wrigley Field, he finally saw the Cubs in a playoff game in 2015. I remember sitting there in the stands, I looked at him, I looked at the field, and I began to cry. I would like to thank the Cubs organization for helping move him around that day, because they wheeled him wherever he needed to be, so thank you. Even as he was losing his ability to move and care for himself, he still managed moves from 333 Red Oak Lane to across Lake Cook Road in Northbrook, and finally all the way up to St. Paul, Minnesota. He just powered through and did it. For a father who I'm pretty sure had 85 years of undiagnosed OCD, Dad, you persevered, you grew, and you succeeded. And as you would say, big time. You did it, Dad, and I'm so proud of you. I pray that wherever you are, with Mom, of course, you can finally relax. Your clients, your community, your friends, and your family are all grateful for all your hard work. My boys know that I can turn anything into a sports analogy. And I believe, according to Rambam, perhaps, the highest level of the sports analogies definitely involves the Cubs. So here goes. On that historic night in November, when Chris Bryant's throw landed softly in Anthony Rizzo's glove, when we all finally experienced true joy and relief, and when my primal scream ended, I immediately called you. Through the many tears, Dad, I choked out, "It happened, Dad, it happened." Well, your life has also happened. You, like the Cubs, overcame so many obstacles and became a great success. I will truly miss all of our calls, all of our time together, but nothing can take away the fact that you happened. Rest easy and give Mom a kiss for me. I love you.
When Ron called me the other morning, it was around 7 o'clock, and after he told me that Bob had passed away, I was genuinely surprised at the emotion that came over me, and I basically started to cry immediately, running upstairs with Ron on the phone, and running into the bedroom and having to wake my wife up to tell her that her father just passed away, and I couldn't do it, so I gave her the phone with Ron. I felt it was somewhat appropriate anyway that Ron should tell her. There were so many things to say, but
He's like in it.
yeah, so I heard somebody say something, so that's good. Naomi, while we were dating and things started to get serious, started sharing with me a lot about her father and how stern he was and how he had very particular ways and how things, as Ron said, had to be in order, and he was a very specific kind of man. And me being the person that I am, I kind of throw that all to the side and I say, well, he's going to meet Glenn Grossman and he's going to know who I am. So upon our first meeting, we went to visit. I was wearing either a t-shirt or a tank top. I was wearing shorts. I was wearing flip-flops because it was summertime. I had a birthday card in my hand because it was his birthday. And walking into the house basically, and literally 2 seconds after we walked in, he's eyeing me up and down, looking at my flip-flops, staring at my t-shirt. He leans over to Naomi and he says something like, he's wearing flip-flops. And then he leans over again and he says, he's wearing a t-shirt. Does he have a change of clothes? Doesn't he know we're going to a nice restaurant? They have linen napkins. They have nice napkins. Well, in that moment, that was the beginning of my relationship with Mr. Les / Bob / Dad. And for the next half hour, it was kind of uncomfortable in the house between the three of us because I felt like immediately he just didn't like me, he did not want to know me, and it just wasn't looking good. So Naomi and I went up to the bedroom, and after some brief discussion, I said to her, I'm going to take care of this right away, and I'm going to do it now. As most of my extended family and most of my family there would say, I pulled a Glenn Grossman. And I went to him and I said, come on, let's go talk, let's go somewhere private. And he looked up at me like he was shocked. He was like, what do you mean go talk? What do we have to talk about? You know, and I was like, come on, let's go talk. So we went upstairs to the bedroom, and during the 2 hours that we spent alone, getting to know each other in that bedroom, Naomi consistently knocked on the door to see if I was okay, which I actually thought was really cute and hysterical at the same time. But yes, we were okay. And we were getting to know each other, and it was very deep and it was very meaningful, and we talked about our lives and we talked about our histories, and I told him about my intentions with his daughter. The meeting finally ended. We were both very happy. We gave each other a hug, and he gave me a blanket. I believe it was a veteran's gift of a flag, which was like, you know, a blanket that you would throw on a couch. So he gave that to me as a gift as we left the bedroom. We went downstairs, and the rest is all history. So that was my first meeting of Mr. Les. And by the way, that birthday card, because I just am who I am, I didn't sign it as, you know, Dear Bob or Dear Mr. Les. I signed it as Dear Bob. Throughout our relationship, Bob and myself, we found that we just liked each other. No false pretenses. No need to hide anything from each other. We always spoke honestly. We had many phone calls where we were both laughing like army buddies, and I'm not exaggerating, like belly laughing, hysterical. And Naomi would look at me and like, what are you guys talking about? What are you talking about? I'm like, I'm just hanging out with your dad. What do you mean you're hanging out with my dad? What are you talking about? I have a lot of really great memories going to the house and having dinner with he and Madeline and the family. And all I can say is that, actually I'm going to repeat something that Bob Dylan told me when I was playing drums for him, actually. He put it the best. He just said it so simply, and expecting, you know, from Bob Dylan, of course he's going to say the prolific as a simple statement. Bob's friend had passed away. We were in the studio. We were standing next to each other. Bob came up to me and he stood there silently for about 5 minutes. I didn't say anything to him, just being respectful at the moment. And he turned to me and he said, you know, life doesn't mix with death. And at first I was kind of like, yeah, that's true. But then as I left the studio that day, I started really thinking about it, and that short sentence, that simple statement just means so many things on so many levels, that life doesn't mix with death. Too many emotions, too much work, too many things that happen with families, finances, just too much stuff. I found it a beautiful statement, and I think it applies here. But speaking about life, I'm gonna stop talking with. I'm gonna finish up with this one statement that I know that Bob grew up a certain way with certain challenges. I know that he was extremely successful in every sense of the word, raising a gorgeous family, very smart, amazing, loving, caring people. And for that alone, I know he's super, super proud. He always was. And he was, in my experience, and I can only speak for myself, of course, he was an amazing guy. He was an amazing man. And I'm very, very thankful that I got to meet him and spend as much time as I did with him. When people grieve over death, I cried, I grieved, I felt emotional. But since that moment has passed for me, I only choose to see his life as he thrived, marrying Madeline, being young, being a go-getter, and being an amazing person all around. And I have so much respect and love for that man. One more thing. I wish I could be there with all of you. I know that given circumstances, it was pretty much impossible for me to be there. But I would basically give anything to give all of you a hug right now, and especially to be there with Naomi, my wife. So I'm sending you an E/V hug because I am there with you. I love you all. Bye-bye.
Time out. I lost 2 boyfriends because Bob did not like the way they were dressed.
Exactly.
Thank goodness Mark came up with a nice shirt on. And shoes, but
You don't even know. You don't even know the conversation I had to prepare Glenn to meet my dad.
yeah.
He's like, what do you mean I have to change my shirt? I'm like, listen to me. Just listen. Leave your ego. I'm just begging you to do this. And he's like, I don't have to change for anybody. You know, I'm like, oh, this is good. This is a disaster. Like, it was literally, but he did it. He did it. Oh my God. Wow. All right. Okay. Okay. Oh my God. All right. Okay. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for showing up for my dad and for us. I'm the baby. We're always last, but then we get the last word, right? So, okay. At the time of my mom's death, all I wanted to do was to do a deep, never to surface again, dive into feelings, sadness, loss, and grief. And now, here with Dad's death, I have been avoiding surrendering to those feelings like I was avoiding COVID-19. Like, anytime the feeling came, I'm in total denial. And so it's gonna shift here, I know, but denial has reared its head and will not be moved, and I simply cannot believe that you're gone. It's not a coincidence that so many of us had the same reaction. No, that's not right. That's not right. No, that's not right. That can't be. I mean, you were 85 years old, so not a young man, but yet we were all totally surprised. And I do want to add in parentheses, I do think it's significant that you didn't die at 86 because that's when the Bears tanked after their championship year of 85. Am I correct? Okay. So here we are, your immediate family, your close friends here in person, and so many of you on Zoom. I can't believe it because you were and are an ever present, and people have mentioned that, you were a present force in my life. Now, whether I listened to that force or rebelled against it, you were a constant force. It's like having a buoy that you can always keep in sight. And even as of late, when you lost some of your short-term memory and physical abilities, you were a constant. Dad, you had a way of looking at the world, which we've discussed, a set of rules that everyone around you knew you lived by, whether they liked it or not.
And some of those were admittedly hilarious. Like, there's one way to load a dishwasher, right? Always demand a stack of napkins, we know that, when you arrive to your table. Packing a suitcase. Don't wear flip-flops on your feet to a restaurant with linen napkins. Always claim your income, right? Don't get audited. Car trunk and drawer organizing is an art form. If he were a young man now, he would be an Instagram star. Or, as many of you know this, call me Mr. Less, even if you're over 40. But while we chuckle, I hesitate lifting these up because you were so deeply sensitive and emotional, never wanting to be the butt of a joke. And folks have spoken, Rabbi Siegel, about your integrity, your love of Judaism, your hard work ethic, and your deep love and prioritization of family. So that's covered. I'm last, so I'll get super personal. Your monkey is so heartbroken to lose her daddy. Her daddy she cried to and was consoled when she couldn't get out of bed after her first love breakup. Her daddy who wrote her letter after letter when she was homesick her first years at camp. Her daddy who schlepped her best friend Amy Abrams and her to museums, zoos, and field trips, telling us to be quiet or resorting to separating us when we were out of control. It's true, he had to sleep in separate rooms when she had sleepovers. Her daddy who made her friends feel welcome with his big smiles and his huge hugs and hearty laughs, the Mr. Less laugh, and an occasional loving ear pinch. Y'all know who you are. And her daddy whose disciplinary bark would bring you to a standstill, hollering, "Slow down, you're gonna break something." That bark was 100% Phil Less, L'Ador Vador, generation to generation. But from Phil, he also got his ethics code. Connection to synagogue community, dedication to family, and ridiculous work ethic, right? The other side was this girl's daddy, who was an emotional teddy bear with a huge heart. That was Seal. That was Grandma Seal, who he adored, a mama's boy in an athlete's uniform. She's losing her daddy. This girl is losing her daddy. The disciplinarian heavyweight, the classic, wait till your father gets home, could freeze childhood buddy Josh Shanes and I, because usually we got wild and broke something that he told us to be careful not to break, right? Her daddy, whose lectures were more torturous than any consequence or punishment. The lecture. She's losing her daddy, for whom no bigger priority than his wife and kids existed. He took off work at the slightest issue with any of us, coming at a moment's notice. He and my mom would drive every turn of season to visit us, showing up for concerts, plays, tournaments, sports events, and parents' weekends. And yes, even though I literally cringed that they were cramping my style with my friends, I was secretly excited that they were there. Dad, you have had so many challenges in your life, and you opened up to me, who knows why, maybe because you felt I was a safe emotional haven for you, and you shared those big fears with me. And in those moments, I witnessed the shift in our relationship, you leaning on me. It was scary and sad and huge and part of my growth. And it has been my biggest privilege to be of service holding you in those moments. Last week was Shavuot, 10 Commandments, giving of Torah, the centerpiece of that holiday. In the middle of the night, my dear friend Chazan Basia Schechter and I taught about the 5th commandment, honor your father and mother. I spoke very personally about you, Dad, many thousands of people. You see, there's no commandment to love your parents, only to honor, and in another section of Exodus, to awe or fear them. Well, what does honoring and awing mean? Honoring, the Sifra says, is to give them food and drink, to clothe and cover them, to bring them inside and take them outside. And you can tell this is most likely speaking to an adult child in some way,
right? Those kind of caring pieces. Awe or fear could include, according to Rambam, it's twice, it's two Rambam. Never sit in your father's seat. Never sit in your father's seat, right? No one sits in dad's chair. Never contradict your parents, okay? Huge fail. Or call them by their first names. I'll pause and let that one sink in. Rambam said we should call him Mr. Less. Mic drop, Dad. So, the Sefer HaChinuch says by honoring them, you're actually paying back a debt. Your parents gave you everything, starting with life. This fifth commandment is nestled between the first commandments, which are God to human relational commandments like Shabbat, and the human to human relationships like don't steal. The bridge to those are your parents. And at a young age, a dad is like a god, for better or for worse. It's one face of the divine. And then somewhere in the development of the relationship, if you're lucky to have this kind of relationship, you push and rebel against that force. But the dad buoy is ever present. He loves you through it, and you grow through it. And maybe he grows and learns as part of that process too, as perhaps does our own biblical God character. And then voila, you're off in your own life, away from the top-down relationship, off to wrestle with the rest of humanity, hopefully taking in the integrity, ethics, and lessons you've learned from him and mom, of course. And I know this to be true for me, reflecting on points of tension we've had, learnings we've had in order to have built our beautiful adult relationship. I know what an amazing dad he was. He, like most dads or parents, was navigating without a big compass. Some of his parents modeling, but also figuring it out with my mom together, with 3 really different kids, with different needs from them. And they stumbled and they recovered. And they erred and learned and succeeded. They loved us fiercely and were so proud of us, as everybody knows. And that little Naomi just wanted to make you proud, Daddy. To have you say those words to me as you did so often. And I felt like a champion when I saw myself through your big, lit up, smiling eyes. I felt like winning the World Series. And now I'm saying it to my own daughter, Marlo, all the time. I'm so proud of you, so proud of you. That's great, you made poopies on the potty. Like, I'm so proud of you. And I know that's directly from you. I could never, Dad, write a long enough legal pad speech to tell you how grateful I am that you were my dad, that you sacrificed everything for us, for me, for mom, and that you not only gave me life, but you helped me to live it. You and I cry at the drop of a hat, shocker. We both feel things so deeply. There just aren't words to express how much I love you, how desperately I pray that you felt cared for, that you felt loved, that you felt honored, that you felt important, that you felt heard and successful. You did it, Dad. You succeeded, and I'm so proud of you.
I know that I speak for everyone here when I say it's just been an extraordinary privilege to hear each of you speak and pay tribute to Bob Less, or Mr. Less. And you've given new meaning to the phrase, less is more. I made reference to Abraham earlier. God said to him at the beginning of his calling, V'hiyeh bracha, be a blessing. Bob Less was a blessing. And I don't think it's an accident that when we read from the Torah this week, we will hear the threefold blessings offered by the Kohanim. 3 blessings, each with its own meaning. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and guard you, is understood by the rabbis as being a blessing for the basics of life: a roof over your head, a meal to eat, physical security. Yishmerecha is home. Bob knew the blessing of a family, as we've heard so eloquently expressed. He also knew what it was like to grow up in a financially challenged household. Grew up in Chicago, West Side, the son of Philip and Cecile, who was a fruit distributor. Close family, and that was their wealth. It was that sense of mishpacha. Bob went to Austin High School, and there he was a state finalist in basketball. At 6'2", he was the center. A different era, to be sure. I want to note the fact that Bob Less went to 3 different colleges before he graduated. And it wasn't because he was struggling in school, but because he needed to help his father. So he would study, he would leave the school, work with his dad, make sure that the family was okay, and then go back to school. This was the type of blessing that Bob was. He was the one who fulfilled that idea of Yishmerecha. He was always looking out for the most basic things, and always starting with home. He served this country. He helped to guard us. Even though he served in the Navy and was stationed in the Mojave Desert, which is a concept that I still haven't wrapped my mind fully around. But he served this country. He was proud of this country. And I don't think it's an accident that he went into accounting, even though he did line up his seeds, didn't he? He went into accounting because that's how people take care of themselves. That's how people create a future for themselves. It is the most basic level of V'yishmerecha. We knew, you sat with Bob Less, that you weren't going to cut any corners, that he was impeccably honest. That was the man. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. It leads to Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May God turn God's countenance towards you, be gracious to you. This is the blessing of the Spirit. And I will talk about his Judaism, but his spiritual home was with Madeline. He met her in an office, kind of. Saw her. Sometime later, he went back to that office and he wanted to know what happened to that pretty girl that he saw, and the woman that he asked happened to be her mother, who took one look at Bob and told him to forget it. But Bob found a way. And even when he called the house, his future mother-in-law said, "You don't want to meet this guy." Maybe Madeline was rebelling, but she met him, and they became the definition of Beshert. When they stood under the chuppah, the tradition referred to them as Re'im Ha'ahuvim, loving friends. I can't think of a better definition for this marriage. They were that in life and married for 56 years. I learned a secret from the children yesterday. Because from the outside, it always looked like Bob was making every decision. The reality is that he was checking with Madeline each and every step of the way. Behind the scenes, she was
working the tiller as they navigated life together. And he would be the first to tell you that she made him a better man. He grew in this relationship. And I have seen during the course of my rabbinate husbands and wives who cared for the other when illness struck. But I can tell you without question that I have never seen a person care more, try harder, do more than Bob did for Madeline. He had a very Jewish heart and loved shul. But I love the notion, and I want to underscore this, that Bob wanted his children to have that which he didn't have growing up, beginning with a strong Jewish education. And Ramah became not only a place for his kids, but a place for him to grow as well. And over the years, Kashrut and Shabbat took on deeper meaning for him. May God turn God's countenance towards you and be gracious to you. May God lift up the divine face towards you and may you know peace. Shalom is that balance between the physical and the spiritual. For Bob, that place of peace, that place of wholeness, that place of completion, that made him feel whole and complete was his family. Nothing gave him greater pleasure than his friends and family. Bob made friends wherever he went, made himself known wherever he went, including Minneapolis. And along the way, he was part of his grandchildren's lives in remarkable ways. Went to every event that he could. He wanted to be present, including Marlo. I was so touched when Naomi told me about watching her father, who was frail, sit with Marlo. And he held her in his arms. She didn't worry for a moment, because he was going to hold her. And in those moments, she saw the illness and the age peel back. And there was her father. There was that smile. He had come alive. Or as Naomi put it, my father returned. Bob Less was Amy. He was present. Bob Less was a blessing. Let us remember him as that. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of a mensch always be a blessing. It is now our privilege to hear from Rabbi Amichai Lau-Laui.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm here in New York, and I share Glenn's regret of not being with you all in the same chapel where we stood just a few years ago honoring Madeline together. On this Friday afternoon, as we are ready to go into Shabbat, I wanted just to share my love with the Less family and all the families and friends that are with you today. Naomi, as many of you know, is one of the most important voices and creators of our community, of the Lab Shul community in New York. And it's been many years now of us being family together, not only at Madeline's funeral at Shiva, but at Marlo's baby naming, and at Glenn and Naomi's wedding, and many other life cycle moments, and big and small throughout the years. It strikes me odd that when Marlowe's baby naming was in Brooklyn, Bob Skyped or Zoomed in from Chicago. And now we are today, because of the circumstances of our bizarre life, so many of us with you all using this technology that still connects us. So a word of honoring Bob's memory. I knew him as Naomi's dad and Les as Mr. Les, or Bob. I got to know him a little bit through the moments of celebration and through the mornings of mourning. And what I'm learning today from these moving eulogies and from having spoken to Naomi these past few days is how much detail mattered. Not just in the accounting and not just in what footwear or the details, but that every detail mattered. And we know that it is the legacy of parents to pass on what's important to them to their children. And so I know from my close work with Naomi how much detail matters. And every detail is what takes the big ideas and makes them the life we need to live. So we already heard the words from the Torah portion that is read this coming Shabbat, which is the priestly blessing, the lofty blessing of the Kohanim. The rest of this Torah portion is a lot of nitty-gritty, minute details of how does sacred life happen. Which Levite is the schlepper and which Levite folds the cloth, who prepares the wood, and who is there to make sure the music happens. The specific detail, measurements, weights, every single item of how the tabernacle of our ancestors would function is part of what this Torah portion is about. And I know now that this attention to detail is this gift, the gift of all that is sacred that Bob Les is leaving us with today, the legacy of love for every single detail. As a father, as a grandfather, as a brother, as a husband, as a Jewish leader, as somebody who just made life meaningful for so many. I know that Bob's legacy will be with Jody, with Ron and Elise, with Naomi and Glenn, with the many grandchildren and great-grandchildren when the time is right. No pressure, y'all. Keep on this legacy of presence, of caring about what matters, and every little detail too. Hamakom Yenachem. May you be comforted in Chicago and in New York, everywhere where we are gathering, on the eve of this Shabbat, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a national crisis. Let this attention to detail, to every sacred detail, to every sacred soul, be a legacy that helps this family and all of us with you make today and tomorrow and the days and the weeks and the months ahead meaningful, with memory, with love, and let that give us all the ability to rise tall and helpful and make this country and this world a better place for many generations to come. May you be comforted, and thank you for the honor of sharing a few words with love on the behalf of the entire Lab Shul community. Hamakom Yenachem.
We rise for the memorial prayer.
מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, אמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרוקיע מזהירים את נשמת רב ראובן יצחק בן פייבל וציפורה, ציפה וציפה, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן, תהי מנוחתו. אנו בעל הרחמים, אז תראהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר אמן.
God, you are exalted and full of compassion. We pray that you take the beloved soul of Mr. Robert Less under the wings of your divine presence. We ask you, God, remember the many worthy and good deeds that Bob performed in the land of the living. We pray that his soul will be bound up in the bond of eternal life, and that he will rest bishalom, that he'll rest in peace. And to that, we can all say, Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Memorial Park Cemetery. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession, the limited amount of people that will be going, please be sure that your bright lights and hazard lights are on at all times, and we'll be providing a flag that will be affixed to the top portion of your car. Memorial contributions in Mr. Less's memory to Camp Ramah in Wisconsin, the Scholarship Fund, or the Lab Shul in New York. That information is on the service folder. For those of you who are watching via live stream, all that information is on the service folder, on the website. Also, due to safety, there are no register books here at the funeral home. So if you'd like to extend a condolence, you can do that via our website. You can send a hug, or you can also just write a note, or through legacy.com. At this time, I invite the pallbearers to please come forward as cantorial soloist Lori Akers sings. Please rise. Pallbearers, please come forward.
May you find comfort. May you find comfort. May you find comfort
Ladies and gentlemen, via live stream, this concludes this service. Shabbat Shalom.